A chemical reaction occurs when new bonds form or old bonds break between atoms. Chemical reactions are the foundation of all life processes, and as we've already seen, the interaction of valence electrons are the basis of all chemical reactions. So let's look at how hydrogen and oxygen molecules react to form water molecules. The starting substances, 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens, are known as the reactants. The ending substances, sorry, I've been talking too much. The ending substances, the 2 molecules of water, are the products. The number of atoms of each element is still the same before they were rearranged. And because they were rearranged and they're interacting together, the resulting product has new and different properties than the hydrogen or the oxygen by themselves. Through thousands and thousands of different chemical reactions, we build body structures and body chemicals that are going to be used to carry out functions. The term metabolism refers to all the chemical reactions occurring in the human body. Each chemical reaction involves energy changes. Energy is the capacity to do work. The 2 primary forms of energy are potential energy, which is energy stored, and kinetic energy, which is energy in motion. For example, if you think about a dam holding water back, or someone standing on the top of that dam getting ready to jump, that is potential energy. But once that dam is open and the water starts flowing, or the person jumps off of the dam down into the water, that is kinetic energy, the energy of motion. Chemical energy is a form of potential energy that's stored in the bonds of compounds and molecules. So when we use energy, we don't use it up because it can't be destroyed and it can't be created. It can only be converted from one form of energy to another form of energy. So the food we eat has energy in the chemical bonds. So that's chemical energy. We're going to use mechanical energy to convert it into other forms of energy. So we convert some forms of chemical energy using mechanical energy to break it down, and we convert it into stored energy if we use some of the nutrients in that food to make ATP and to move muscles. But then we can also store it in additional chemical energy, just like it before, by building ATP molecules, which are the fuel that we use for our body. There are many different types of chemical reactions that take place in the human body all the time, but one of the important ones that you'll hear about in several different discussions that we'll have are the oxidation reduction reactions. So these always occur together. So when something is oxidized, something else is being reduced. So oxidation refers to the loss of electrons, and that releases energy. Reduction is when something gains electrons and therefore gains energy as well by storing that energy in those chemical bonds. An example of this is when you've got a food molecule such as glucose. When that's oxidized, the energy produced is used by a cell to carry out various other functions. Okay, so you've got oxidation and reduction going on by gaining the electrons to do other reactions and other functions in the cell, and oxidizing the glucose to break it down. We're not going to go much further into that. I did want to just throw that in there now, though, as we're studying different types of chemical reactions so that you would have a little bit of an understanding when it comes back up again. Most of the chemicals in your body exist in the form of compounds. Scientists divide these compounds into 2 classes, inorganic compounds and organic compounds. Inorganic compounds usually lack or do not have carbon, and most of the time they're structurally very simple. They have only a few atoms and they can't be used for complicated biological functions. They include water, salts, acids, bases. Inorganic compounds may have either ionic or covalent bonds. Organic compounds, on the other hand, always contain carbon and usually also contain hydrogen, and they always have covalent bonds. Most of the organic compounds are going to be large molecules. A lot of them are going to be made up of long chains of carbon. Organic compounds make up probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40% of the human body. So we're going to look at some examples of inorganic compounds first. Water being the most important and, of course, most abundant inorganic compound in living systems. You could probably survive weeks without food, but without water, you die within a matter of days. Almost all body reactions have to have water as a part of their metabolism. So without that water, you're not going to make it very long. So water, as we looked at already, is a polar molecule. Therefore, it works very well as a solvent, and you may hear it sometimes referred to as the universal solvent, which is not quite true because it won't dissolve everything, but it does dissolve a lot of things. So let's talk about that dissolving. What is a solvent? In a solution, the substance called the solvent dissolves another substance called the solute. There may be more solvent than solute, and usually is more liquid than the stuff dissolved in it. So here you can see we've got a molecule of sodium and we've got water surrounding it. So if we put this crystal of sodium in water, then those polar areas of the water are going to be attracted to the positive and the negative charges of the chloride and the sodium ions, and it will dissolve those molecules of sodium. Water serves as an ideal medium for most chemical reactions in the body as well. During digestion, decomposition or breaking down reactions occur that break large molecules down into smaller molecules simply by adding water. This type of reaction is called hydrolysis. Hydro meaning water and lysis meaning to break. Hydrolysis reactions enable us to take nutrients and absorb those nutrients into the body. On the other hand, when smaller molecules are joined together to make a larger molecule, this is a dehydration synthesis reaction. Dehydrate. D to remove and hydra, water. So a water molecule is one of the products formed. You'll see these dehydration and hydrolysis reactions taking place when we look at forming the larger macromolecules in the organic section coming up. Water has properties that make it ideal as a solvent as well, and very important biologically. It has a high heat capacity, so it can hold a high degree of heat, and also high heat of vaporization, so it works very well to help cool the body. When we sweat, a lot of heat leaves our body through vaporization and evaporation of that sweat. Water acts as a lubricant. We've got water throughout our body fluids that surround our cells, extracellular fluid outside the cell, and intracellular fluid inside the cell. Water also is a large component of the serous fluid that we talked about in Chapter 1 that helps to reduce friction and allows our organs to move and to slide so that we don't have organs rubbing against walls or rubbing against each other. A mixture is a combination of compounds or elements that are blended together but not chemically bonded together. So we're going to look just briefly at three different types of solutions. A solution is a homogeneous mixture. That means everything is the same when you have two or more substances that are dissolved together. So, for instance, if we put a spoon of salt or sugar in a glass of water and we mix it up, you're not going to separate those by normal chemical means, okay? So it's going to appear very clear, you can see through it, and it does not separate. Colloids, on the other hand, are very thick, so you can think of something like Jell-O or milk, where you've got large particles that are dissolved in the solution. And then we have suspensions, the third type of mixture. A suspension is something where part of the solution will settle out. If you think about muddy water, if you leave muddy water sitting over a period of time, the mud, the dirt will settle to the bottom of the container. So the dirt was suspended in the water. Blood is a suspension. When you first pull blood out of the human body with a syringe, you've got a nice red solution or mixture that's made up of all these cells suspended in plasma. However, if you leave that container of blood sitting for a period of time, you'll see that cells will settle to the bottom because it is truly cells suspended in a liquid. Continuing with inorganic compounds that are important in the human body, we're going to look at acids, bases, and salts. When inorganic acids, bases, or salts dissolve in water, they dissociate. That simply means that they separate into ions and become surrounded by water molecules. So an acid is a substance that dissociates in water to release hydrogen ions. So by definition, if something dissociates in water and releases hydrogen ions, it is an acid. So here we've got hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is the stomach acid that we all have in our body. So when it breaks down in water, it releases hydrogen ions and chloride ions. Releasing the hydrogen ion makes it a base, or makes it an acid, I'm sorry. Here we have potassium hydroxide, which is a base. So when you have something that dissociates to release a hydroxyl, it is a base. Bases bind with hydrogen ions and reduce the number of hydrogen ions in a solution. Okay? When you add an acid and a base together, they react to form salts. So if we look at this hydrochloric acid and we look at this potassium hydroxide, we've got HCl plus KOH. If we put those two together, the potassium and the chloride are going to react together to form a salt, potassium chloride, that will be in water. So these are very important because your salts are going to dissociate and cause electrolytes to be formed. And remember, we mentioned earlier that electrolytes are going to be important for conducting an electrical current or a nerve impulse throughout the body. Your acids and bases are important in regulating pH. Okay, pH is simply a scale that measures how many hydrogen ions are in a solution. So if we look at a pH scale, and this is sort of a complicated version of it, but we're just interested in this down here at the bottom. So a pH scale runs from 0 to 14. 7.0 is perfectly neutral, which means something is not an acid and it's not a base. So pure water has a pH of 7.0. Now remember, an acid was something that released hydrogen ions in a solution. So the higher the number of hydrogen ions, the more acidic that solution is. And that means a lower pH. So anything below 7.0 is an acid. Okay? 7.0 to, or anything above 7.0 is more basic or alkaline. So it's going to have a lot of those OHs or hydroxides that can bind to those hydrogen ions to help neutralize pH. So just to give you an idea of the pH of some very common substances. So remember, low pHs below 7.0 are acids. So the hydrochloric acid found in your stomach is one of the strongest acids with a pH that averages usually around 2.0. Think about how acidic lemon juice is. Okay? Lemon juice only at 2.0. So your gastric acid, your stomach juice, is more acidic than lemon juice most of the time. And here gives you a few additional acidic substances as well. All right, so your saliva, almost at a neutral pH, so just barely acidic. And here we've got milk, just barely acidic. And then pure water at 7.0, which has a neutral pH. Most body fluids, such as blood, semen, your cerebrospinal fluid, your bile, pancreatic juices are going to be alkaline. If you think about the role of pancreatic juices, they're going to be added to food that's coming out of the stomach. And if it's been in the stomach, it's going to be very, very rich in acid. So those alkaline substances in the pancreatic juice will help to neutralize that acidic food as it comes out of the stomach. A buffer system is something that works in the human body to maintain the pH of body fluids, so maintain homeostasis. So a buffer system helps to regulate pH by converting strong acids or bases into weak acids and bases. There are many types of buffer systems that you're going to learn about in your study of anatomy and physiology. Right now, just get the basic idea of what a buffer system is, and that it is a system that helps to regulate pH. Maintaining a stable pH in the human body is vitally important because fluctuations of pH can lead to too much acid, a condition known as acidosis, or too much base, a condition known as alkalosis, being built up in body fluids. Now remember, enzymes that drive chemical reactions are proteins. When you have too much acid or too much base, you can denature those proteins or take them away from their natural state, and a denatured protein can no longer do its job. So an example of that, the job of a chicken egg is to make a chicken, right? Well, if we take that egg and we put it in a pan and we heat it up, then that egg is never going to go back to be a chicken because the heat has denatured the proteins that would have created a baby chicken. So acids and bases can do the same thing with all of the proteins, or with many of the proteins that are found in the human body. So I just wanted to give you a quick example of why that's important.